What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Same Philly Sports History for July 20th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Saturday edition of the podcast. Well, that certainly escalated quickly. Phils lost 8-7 after blowing a 7-4 lead yesterday to the Pirates. Definitely not the start we wanted. Ryan Kerkering and Jose Alvarado struggled in relief. Both of them giving up, both of them giving up 2 runs, and they had the lead going into the 9th and blew it. In their defense, yes, it wasn't good for either one of those guys, but the offense didn't do much after the 5th inning either, and the Pirates' bullpen is not the greatest, so they definitely need to work on that coming back today and tomorrow. Braves got rained out, so the lead is currently at 8 games. They'll play 2 today against the Cardinals. Cristopher Sanchez is back on the mound for the Phillies today. Since he did pitch in the All-Star game, I'm thinking he's not going to come out necessarily as flat as Nola did. But I will say, I think what it does, especially if Weston Wilson's going to be able to produce playing in that platoon role with Brandon Marsh, yes, they need more production from the outfield, but they need another guy in that bullpen. And I said it last week, Alvarado's giving me Mitch Williams vibes, and that is one of those things you don't want to have that hanging over your head going into the postseason. So I say let's strengthen the bullpen as we're approaching. I think we're 11 days or so from the trade deadline. Hopefully, Weston Wilson is able to continue to do what he did yesterday. Solid game for him. But, man, that's a brutal loss. And it's tough, especially coming off of that 18-3 loss to the A's. Hopefully they're able to bounce back this weekend. I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet, but they got my attention now. And it could be just nothing, but I didn't like the fact that the offense was so good and then didn't do anything against a not-so-good Pirates bullpen. But today is a new day. Let's go get them. We can still win this series, taking 2 out of 3, and then the schedule gets tough. So not a good way to start post-All-Star break for the Phils. However, like I said, I think it's very apparent now that the bullpen should be the priority, looking to upgrade going into the trade deadline. I don't know if that means getting the dude from Oakland, even if it means giving up Painter or Aiden Miller. I don't know. However, they got to do something because the National League is laid out perfectly for the Phillies right now. And that bullpen, though, is the glaring spot right now that they're not producing. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure Dave Dombrowski is on it. But the rumors are swirling, so it should be a fun couple days here as we see what the Phils are going to do. Quick housekeeping note from yesterday. I was talking about the turf at the vet and the guy that blew out both knees for the Bears. It was, in fact, Wendell Davis, and he severed both of his patella tendons. That's just how bad that turf was. But want to make sure I'm giving you all the information that is accurate. But it was Wendell Davis of the Bears who blew out both of his knees, severed his patellas. Apparently his kneecaps were up in his thighs. That's how bad the injury was. So, God, that turf was just brutal. Be sure to check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences podcast. They have their baseball edition out now, doing good things. And they're also a good follow on Instagram. Post a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with those guys. Very interactive. So go check out the Clashing Conferences podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And then go over to Philly Goat, do a little back-to-school shopping, get some stuff for your kids. The shoes, they'll be the talk of the school with those shoes. Stickers for the water bottle. Any shirts you can imagine. So go check them out. Be sure to use that promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. Helps me out. Lets Ryan know that you guys are listening. And obviously you're going to help yourself out as well. Sixers finished their regular season of the Summer League yesterday. Ricky Council was good again. Jarrett McCain's still struggling with shooting, but he's still playing hard. So like I said, I think come training camp, those shots are going to start falling for him. Likely they have one more game. I'm not sure how they choose the playoff teams. Like top 4 teams make the playoffs for the Summer League. Sixers have they would be tied there. They went 3-1. But I don't know if they do point differential. It's kind of a weird way they do it. However, they should get one more game, like a consolation game, later. I guess it would be next weekend or later this weekend. I'll keep you posted. It was like I saw 3 different scenarios based there, but they should have one more game left to kind of get it right. There are definitely some encouraging things. These young guys won't be relied on heavily to do a lot of big things. However, getting this experience is definitely going to help them once it comes time. And I'm very encouraged by Ricky Council. He should be a solid piece for Nick Nurse's bench. All right, today we're going to go and do a little Phillies doubleheader, mainly because there's still not a whole lot to talk about in Philly sports. And 2, because I couldn't decide which one of these I wanted to focus on. So we're going to do both. First, we're going to go back to 1912. And on this day in 1912, the Phillies beat the Cubs 14-2 to move their record to 500. Grover Cleveland Alexander pitched a complete game, scattered 4 hits for the Phillies. Our old pal, though, Sherry Magee was the story. This has been Sherry Magee month here on this day in Philly sports history. Sherry Magee was at it again. No, he did not punch an umpire, but he did steal home plate twice, tying a major league record. The last time this was done was by Vic Power of Cleveland back in 1958. Magee, for his career, did steal home 23 times. And this is now the second time this month we've talked about him stealing home. But on this day, the Phillies beat the Cubs 14-2 back in 1912. Sherry Magee stole home plate 2 times in the contest and did not punch an umpire. And then next, we're going to move all the way up now to 2009. Phillies once again beat the Cubs in a blowout 10-1. This time it was at Citizens Bank Park. Ryan Howard, Carlos Ruiz, and Raul Ibanez all homered for the Phillies. For Ibanez, it was a 3-run homer, and it was his 25th of the season. I forgot just how good he was that 2009 year. But it did give him 207 for his career. And with that home run, he passed former Philly Pete Incaviglia on the all-time home run list for players whose last name begins with I. Ibanez is still on top of that list. Just a little fun fact. Not many players that, I can think of Ichiro, but he wasn't necessarily a power hitter. But Raul Ibanez on this day passed Pete Incaviglia on the all-time home run list for players whose last name begins with I. And the only other Philly, for the record, that is on the all-time list for home runs by anybody with that letter in their last name is Ryan Howard, who is tied with Frank Howard with 382 for those whose last names begin with H. Just a cool little fact. So a little Phillies double dip today. In 1912, they beat the Cubs 14-2. Sherry Magee stole home plate twice, tying a Major League Baseball record. And then in 2009, they beat the Cubs again, 10-1. Raul Ibanez hit his 207th career home run, moving him into the number 1 spot for players whose last name begins with I. And again, I just forgot how good Ibanez was when they brought him in for that year. Anyway, let's move on to the Ultimate Philly Sports Nickname Tournament and recap yesterday's matchup. And we have our first big upset of the tournament. The number 1 seed, Concrete Charlie, went down in a battle with the Axeman. The Axeman knocked off the number 1 seed with 54% of the vote. This one was close all day, and I don't necessarily agree with your voting. However, I can see it. It's not like this is JR knocking off Concrete Charlie. The Axeman is a very, very solid, somewhat underrated nickname. So the Axeman with 54% of the vote moves on from the Schuylkill region. And then in another close matchup, the Executioner knocked out Brian Dawkins' Weapon X with 57% of the vote. So the Executioner, the number 1 seed, will move to the Elite 8 later next week. But today we have 2 more great matchups to fill out the Elite 8 in both the Cheesesteak and the Ben Franklin region. Our first matchup is out of the Cheesesteak. We have the number 1 seed, Chocolate Thunder, Daryl Dawkins, taking on the number 4 seed, the Round Mound of Rebound. great matchup of Sixers big men. Let's start with Darryl Dawkins, and at this point, I'm going to try to give you things that I haven't given you so far. Darryl Dawkins from Planet Lovetron. He would spend his offseason practicing interplanetary funkmanship. At least that's what he said. He had a lot of fun when he played. And this, to me, is just an example of embodying the nickname, embodying that 70s funk era. But yeah, Planet Lovetron practicing his interplanetary funkmanship. This dude was just a fun guy. Stevie Wonder, we talked about, gave him the nickname when his handler said the big chocolate guy just threw down a dunk. He was for his career, he was a solid NBA player. Also, really played a few good years over in Italy as well. Has his jersey retired for one of the teams over there. But really, he's just known for his personality, as evident by being from Planet Lovetron and working on interplanetary funkmanship. Did go to 3 NBA Finals to his credit as a player, but he would give his nickname or dunks nicknames. He would wear necklaces. He called himself Dr. Dunkenstein, Dr. Dunk, Sir Slam. Back when the NBA did not allow them to wear gold chains, so he would wear it all the way up until he got put into the game. But known for breaking his backboards, they had to change the equipment for him, and he would even nickname his dunks the Gorilla, Look Out Below, and then the first time he broke a backboard, he called it the Chocolate Thunder Flying, Robin Eyes Crying, Teeth Shaking, Glass Breaking, Rump Roasting, Bun Toasting, Wham Bam, Glass Breaker, I Am Jam, Dunk. That just goes to show you how great this dude was, just personality. And honestly, naming that dunk that, to me, is why he's the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. But Darryl Dawkins, Chocolate Thunder, our number 1 seed out of the Cheesesteak region, taking on another legendary Sixer, Charles Barkley, the round mound of Rebound, and just another character as well. Like, we've been blessed with some very big personalities in Philly over the years, also known as Sir Charles and the bread truck, they called him in college. He was an All-American there at Auburn, number 5 overall pick in 1984. Led the league in rebounding only 1 year in 1987. But at a time where he was 6'4", and there were a lot of big, tall centers in the league, and was not afraid to speak his mind, whether it was the whole I am not a role model, not speaking out against the ownership. He would call out his own teammates, being like, these guys suck. I remember when they got Charles Shackelford, he said, we got the wrong Shaq. But the stories with Barkley are just great. He played a game drunk in 1992 because he thought he was getting traded to the Lakers, so he went out and started drinking to celebrate. His agent called him and said the Sixers backed out of the deal, and he was like, well, what am I going to do? I am hammered. Came to the game, played drunk. His number 32 is retired. He's a Hall of Famer, one of the best players to ever play in the NBA, all 75th anniversary team, and just an absolute legend. The round mound of Rebound is our 4 seed in the Cheesesteak region. Now it is your turn. Who's got the better Philly sports nickname? Chocolate Thunder, the round mound of Rebound. 267-495-8531. That's the number to the Back to the Future voice and text line. Text me, call me there. Let me know your thoughts. You can always hit me up on social media as well. Jimbo_Mont at Twitter and TikTok. At Philly Jimbo on Instagram. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you can vote there. Follow me on LinkedIn. Vote right there on your screen if you're listening on Spotify. Leave a comment on Apple Podcasts. Leave a comment on the YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, though. Jimbo_Mont. Spread the word. I want to start doing some more live things just randomly. So the best way to stay in the loop on that is to follow me on social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get the notifications. Maybe on Sundays we might be doing some live Eagles feeds. I haven't worked out the details yet, but the best way to stay up to date on that is to subscribe and then tell your friends, because we can have some fun and do all that. All right, over to the Ben Franklin region. And these two are absolute legends as well, who don't need much of an introduction. The number 2 seed, the Boston Strangler, takes on the number 6 seed, Smokin Joe Frazier. Let's start with Tony, who was an MVP type player, a Hall of Fame player if it were not for his injuries. To his credit, he is in the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame and got his nickname from the Boston media because he just killed the Celtics early in his career before the injuries kicked in. Obviously, it's a play on the Boston Strangler mass murderer up in Boston. But Andrew Toney was a 2-time All-Star, averaged 16 points a game, 4 assists, was good in that 83 playoff run to the championship off the bench. Everybody gives Moses Malone all the credit for that, rightfully so. He got them over the hump. But Andrew Toney was a big part of that playoff run as well. Charles Barkley said he is the best player he's ever played against. Larry Bird said he was one of 2 shooting guards that I was afraid of, the other being Michael Jordan. So that's pretty damn good company. But the Boston Strangler, Andrew Toney, a career cut way too short due to injuries. He is our number 2 seed out of the Ben Franklin region, taking on the heavyweight champion, Smokin Joe Frazier, heavyweight champ, gold medalist, 32-4-1 with 27 KOs for his career. He's in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Only 4 losses came to Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. No shame in that because those two are absolute legends. Got his nickname because his trainer said, "I want to see you punching so fast that smoke comes off your gloves." And just he's the epitome of a Philly tough fighter. And he had his Joe Frazier boxing gym down on North Broad. I had a chance to go in there one time and see it. It was just a very cool, like, old school, like, remember the scenes from the boxing gym in Rocky? That's what this gym reminded me of. They have the statue down at Xfinity Live for him, known for his powerful left hook. Those battles with Muhammad Ali were great, and my dad, being such a big Ali fan, obviously I know all about both of those fights, and for all the trash he talked, Joe Frazier put a beating on Muhammad Ali in all 3 of those fights. He is one of the influences to the character of Rocky. Obviously, they took a couple different. Chuck Wepner was like the main guy, the story part, but he definitely took a lot of Joe Frazier type sort of character traits when creating the character. Sylvester Stallone did when creating the character Rocky. He is the I don't know. To me, anyway, he is the rationale or the reason. I can't think of the word right now. The influence for Mr. Sandman in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And if you want to go to Philly Goat, they have Mr. Sandman's boxing gym shirts. One of my favorite shirts from them. Just a quick little Philly Goat plug. And he's also the first verse in one of my all-time favorite Wu-Tang Clan songs as well, so we'll give him credit for that. But this should be a battle. Smokin Joe Frazier, the heavyweight champion of the world, versus the Boston Strangler, a member of the last Sixers team to win the NBA championship. This is the tough one. I mean, in the Cheesesteak region, I'm going Chocolate Thunder over the Round Mound. But this one, I could see this going either way. Does the Cinderella story for Smokin Joe continue? That is up to you. 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Call me, text me, hit me up on the social media, but get your votes in for today's Sweet 16 matchups. Chocolate Thunder versus the Round Mound of Rebound. The Boston Strangler versus Joe Frazier. Get the votes in. We did a Phillies doubleheader today on this day in 1912. They beat the Cubs 14-2. Our old pal Sherry Magee stole home twice, tying a Major League Baseball record. And then in 2009, the Phillies beat the Cubs once again 10-1. Raul Ibanez hit his 207th career home run, moving him past Pete Incaviglia, Inky himself, for the all-time home run lead for players whose last name begins with the letter I. Did not even know they kept track of those things, but I have a site now, so if it ever comes up, let me know, and I'll let you know who has the most home runs. I don't think anybody has one that starts with the letter X. I think that was the only one. But But let's go, Phils. Let's get it together. Let's take 2 out of the next these next 2 games against the Pirates. Cristopher Sanchez, I'm looking at you. Let's step it up. Bryce, I'd like to see you kind of come out. You've been a little iffy since that return from injury, so now would be a great time for you to step it up and get back into the MVP race, because we do have that open bet for Bryce to win the MVP. But go out and enjoy this beautiful Saturday. Be sure to get your vote in for the Ultimate Philly Sports Nickname Tournament. It's getting tougher. I've had a lot of people reach out saying, man, these games are getting tough to pick. And yeah, these are the best of the best. We've kind of weeded out the Weber states and the Coppin states. So they're sort of out. These are the blue blood nicknames here in Philly. So it will be tough. But be sure to get those votes in. Enjoy your Saturday. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for July 20th, 2024. I'm Jim Montgomery. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.